The Chokehold Hour resumes where we left off, discussing the potentially legendary card that looms over our heads and will take place this Saturday, that is UFC 304. Now, we've talked about a lot of really high-level fights that will take place on said card. I mean, the main event, the co-main event, you got two belts on the line. You got Muhammad Mokaev and Manel Kape. There are a lot of talented fighters on this card, but one fight we have yet to touch on, and maybe the fight that interests me the most, would be the featherweight bout between Giga Chikadze and Arnold Allen. It's so interesting because both of these guys were well on their way to being staples of the featherweight division. They were almost there. Giga had, I believe it was, a 7-fight win streak, and Arnold Allen had a 10-fight win streak. Then, both of them proceed to suffer setbacks that kind of put a pause on their career and dissension to the top. Now, Giga Chikadze had a very different setback than Arnold Allen did, but nonetheless, they were two guys who had star power and just couldn't get over the hump. And Giga being 35 years old, Arnold Allen has been in the UFC for 9 years. He's 30. Both of them kind of need to get the wheels going now if they want to make another run at the 145 strap, especially Giga. I mean, once you get to the 35-plus territory, unless you're Glover Teixeira or Francis Ngannou, it is very hard for you to re-enter the top of the sport. Giga Chikadze, we all know and love him for his Giga kick. You know, he's got that left body kick. He finds your midsection and just crumbles you. Sometimes he'll go high with it. Sometimes he will. And he found that Giga kick when he fought Edson Barboza, when he fought Cub Swanson, knocked them both out, made it look easy. That's why people were so high on him. It's the Giga kick. He's 8-1 in the UFC, only has one loss in the UFC, and that loss comes against Calvin Kattar, and it was an absolute battering. I mean, I remember. It's funny because that fight was after the Max Holloway-Calvin Kattar fight, and the blessed man put on one of the most dominant performances against Kattar in UFC history. I think at that time it was the most strikes ever landed, and maybe even thrown, in featherweight history. He just battered Calvin for 5 rounds. I know you all remember the clip. I'm the best boxer in the UFC, baby. He was talking to the commentary booth while beating up another man. That might have been the best Max Holloway ever looked, and that's crazy to say considering his performance at UFC 300 versus Justin Gaethje. But then, Calvin Kattar, after receiving one of the biggest beatings in the sport, in the history of the sport potentially, turns around and does the exact same thing to Giga Chikadze. I mean, it was mind-blowing to watch. I really thought that would be Giga's coming out party, so to speak, but instead, it was quite literally the opposite. Calvin Kattar dominated Giga from the first bell all the way to the 25th minute of that fight. It was a 5-round battering, and I remember at the end of that fight, Giga was on his back, just taking shots, and whether that final horn sounded or not, he would have lost the fight, whether it was TKO or decision. Calvin Kattar had him at his wits' end. Now, Giga did bounce back in his next fight, but it was against mediocre competition and Alex Caceres. And like I said, guys, Giga's 35. If he wants to make another run at the title, it's got to start now. Now, Arnold Allen is only 30. He's 10-2 in the UFC. Had a 10-fight win streak. 10-fight win streak. And guess who ended it? It was the blessed man once again, Max Holloway. Always a topic of discussion. He's done so much in the sport. I mean, Max, being one of the most talented volume fighters ever in martial arts, did what he does best and just outworked Arnold Allen. I think he doubled the total strikes landed in that fight. It was like 140 for Max, maybe 70 for Arnold Allen. Yeah, Max was better on that night. Now, Arnold Allen fought a valiant fight. He stole around, but yeah, Max dropped him at the end of that fight, and Max Holloway was the better fighter. Now, move on to Arnold Allen's next fight, and he took another loss, but of a different flavor. He fought the grappling-heavy Russian Movsar Evloev, and Movsar took him down 5 times and held him there. That's what Movsar does. Movsar will look to do that again against Aljo in his next fight, even though Aljo is a grappling-heavy styled martial artist. But yeah, Movsar beat Arnold Allen. Now, neither of these losses tell me that Arnold Allen's time at the top of the sport is done. Losing to Max Holloway, there's no shame in that. I mean, Arnold Allen fought better, much better, against Max Holloway than a guy like Justin Gaethje did. I mean, Justin's one of the best fighters in the sport, one of the scariest fighters in the sport, one of the most violent fighters in the sport. But most importantly, he might be the most powerful puncher, pound for pound, in the UFC. And Max Holloway left him out cold face first on the canvas in one of the most spectacular knockouts this sport has ever seen. So is losing to Max Holloway the end of the world, especially in a competitive-ish fight? No. I mean, he got beat for sure, handily, but he made it all 5 rounds, landed some significant shots and elbows of his own, and then he went on to lose to Movsar. And Movsar's just one of those guys. I mean, if you aren't an extremely high-level grappler, he's going to beat you. Movsar is very good on the ground. I mean, he ragdolled Dan Ige for 15 minutes, did the same thing to Arnold Allen. Movsar is an elite grappler, and Arnold Allen was not prepared to fight that Russian style of wrestling. That's okay. But I don't think his time at the top of the sport is done just yet, especially because, I mean, you guys know the saying, styles make fights, and Arnold Allen is a relatively volume-heavy fighter. Of course, you can't out-volume Max Holloway, but prior to that Max Holloway fight, Arnold Allen looked freaking awesome. He looked freaking awesome. He beat Calvin Kattar. He knocked out Calvin Kattar, who is the man who battered Giga Chikadze, and he also knocked out Dan Hooker in the first round of their fight. So Arnold Allen was on his way. And I know MMA math doesn't work. There are many cases where one guy beats one guy beats another guy, and that guy beat the guy who originally beat him. I mean, for some reason in this sport, skill sets just translate differently in certain matchups. But Arnold Allen made easy work of Calvin Kattar, and Calvin Kattar made easy work of Giga Chikadze. Now, that's not the reason I think Arnold Allen's going to win this fight. One, he's 5 years younger. But second, I mean, I spoke about it before. Giga Chikadze is known and loved for that Giga kick, but his issue is he really fights with a lack of volume. He relies on his power. He knows he can finish a fight at any point, anytime, anywhere. So he does not overwhelm you. He doesn't jab, cross. He doesn't throw combinations and extend them past a couple of strikes. He relies on finding that one big shot. But Arnold Allen comes forward. He's a pressure fighter. He pressured even the likes of Max Holloway in that fight. And he throws a decent amount of strikes. Arnold Allen is a relatively active striker. And styles make fights. If you are just going to sit back and wait for that one shot against a guy who really hasn't been finished in his career and will come forward, will out-volume you, and continue to work over the course of a 15-minute fight, it's going to be a long night for you. And I think it'll be a long night for Giga Chikadze. Now, Arnold Allen lost 2 fights in a row. I understand. You can make the argument that his time at the top of the sport is coming to the end. But Giga's last win was against Alex Caceres, and it was a relatively competitive fight. Alex Caceres has never been considered an elite of the elite in this sport. Never. Alex Caceres is a talented striker, but that's about it. Arnold Allen is a very well-rounded mixed martial artist, and he showed that against Max Holloway. I mean, at the end of that fight, before he got dropped, he landed a nasty elbow. It's not like he wasn't doing damage. I know Blessed gets hit often, but Arnold Allen put up as much of a fight as he could have. Now, Giga, on the other hand, got dominated by Calvin Kattar, and it showed. That fight specifically outlined the flaws in Giga Chikadze's game. His inactivity is his kryptonite. He does not throw enough strikes to beat guys at the highest level, and I think Arnold Allen will just out-volume him, outwork him, and eventually overwhelm him. Maybe he'll find the TKO. It could go all 15 minutes, but I just don't see Giga finding that Giga kick against a guy as smart. And, I mean, Arnold Allen has the capability to be defensively responsible. Sometimes he abandons that, but I don't think he will in this fight. He studied Giga. He knows Giga is a relatively inactive fighter, and he will come forward, be defensively responsible, and stay active, stay on his gas tank, and just overwhelm Giga for 15 minutes. Give me Arnold Allen to win this fight.